Before President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump face off this Thursday, a Reuters report says Trump has a proposal to end the Russia-Ukraine war. What's his strategy if he gets elected, and how could it impact U.S.-China relations? We spoke to John Sitilides, former U.S. State Department diplomacy consultant, for his take. John Sitilides, thank you so much for joining us. Good to have you back on the show.
It's great to be with you, Tiffany. Thank you for having me.
Now, Reuters is reporting that if Trump wins in November, he would only supply Ukraine with weapons if there's a peace deal on the table. This is according to two former chiefs of staff in Trump's National Security Council. Trump's spokesperson has said only statements directly from Trump should be considered. But what do you make of this proposal?
And so I think this proposal has been made to former President Trump. It's not his plan, right? It's what former aides have proposed to him, and he has not clearly given a yes or a no, just indicated that there are parts that he likes and parts that maybe he doesn't like. But there's another part to this, of course, Tiffany. One is that he would cut off aid to Ukraine if they did not come to the negotiating table with Vladimir Putin and with Moscow. But the other side of it is he will significantly increase lethal military aid to Ukraine if Putin and Russia do not come to the table. So the idea here is for incentives to both sides to come to the table, negotiate some type of a ceasefire right away, and then see if that opens the pathway to a diplomatic settlement of the Ukraine conflict.
Now, Beijing has been watching what's been happening with Ukraine, especially the international response to it. What would this type of a move mean in terms of how the U.S. counters Beijing's aggression?
We need to look at this as the United States from a strategic interest perspective. And the great debate, the great battle lines that are being drawn in the years and decades to come could potentially play out in the Indo-Pacific region, not only over Taiwan, which has been, of course, the linchpin issue for several years, but even as we've seen in recent weeks and months, very belligerent activity by the People's Liberation Army Navy against the Philippines and against other countries in the South China Sea, international waterways which the People's Republic of China sees as sovereign Chinese waters. It's difficult to see how Xi Jinping understands the U.S. response to date, because there has been significant American and European support for Ukraine, but there really is no clear strategy or way out here. And I think that's probably a puzzling predicament for Beijing to try to determine what the long-term exit strategy might be in the event of a conflict in the Indo-Pacific.
Expanding on that, what would all of this mean in terms of U.S.-China relations going forward?
Well, I think China is already preparing for the potential conflict. We do see a significant hoarding of foodstuffs and fertilizers. We see increasing hoarding of natural gas and oil. So I think that's already baked into the equation, and we see this playing out over the last several years. But much of this really depends on whether or not Xi Jinping is trustworthy and sincere in trying to improve relations with the United States. We know that President Biden and General Secretary Xi last year announced that they would look to produce a thaw in U.S.-China relations. But now we see a report, I think in today's Wall Street Journal, by our U.S. ambassador in Beijing, Nicholas Burns, that the Chinese don't seem at all sincere about trying to improve relations and remain very much dedicated towards a semi-unrestricted warfare type strategy against the U.S. and against the American-led international order.
John Sitilides, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.